So I have this new nightmare with my mother-in-law. It's nothing really against her. She's just a super enabler for one of her sons who is not on the right side that he should be. He's addicted, and he's just basically being used, and all he wants to do is take money from his mother. Well, that's not the point of the story. The point of this story is now my mother-in-law wants us to join in helping him. And we don't agree it's the right thing to do, and I'm gonna walk you through the beginning of how my family almost fell apart. I'm having in-law issues, and I'm not sure how to deal with them because they involve my children, who are still very young and don't understand what's going on. For some background, I've been married to my husband for 8 years, and we have 2 lovely children together. The oldest is 6 and the youngest is 3, and my marriage, for the most part, has been really wonderful. I love my husband and my family that we've built together. We both have good-paying jobs, own our own homes and land, and our kids go to a good private school. My family lives across the country, so I don't really get to spend time with them outside of holidays. But Mark's family lives in the same city as us, so we see them a lot, and they're the source of all our problems. Mark has a younger brother, Colin, who is a drug addict. Somebody in college introduced him to some drugs, and it was all downhill from there, and everyone in the immediate family knows about his issues, and said issues have put members of the family in very compromising positions, to points where quite a few have cut him off. The first time I encountered his brother was during the bachelor and bachelorette parties we had before our wedding. We had both of them together in Miami about a month before the wedding. The groom's side rented their own space, and the bride's side, my side, rented our own space. We planned separate activities for the most part, but we met up on the last day of the trip to have a bit of fun together. It was a lot of fun for me and my girls, but the men had a really rough time. When we got back, Mark pulled me to the side and told me his best friend Colin was doing lines in the bathroom. They were staying in a hotel suite, and the kind where maids came in to clean every day, so they were freaking out. They had planned to go out and spend the day at the beach, but instead they had to stay in and get rid of every trace of drug-related residue. It pretty much put a damper on the whole trip. But that's not where it ends. After this happened, Mark wanted Colin out of the wedding. But it came in problem number 2. Their mother. She capes and covers for Colin every chance she gets. When Mark went to talk to her and his father about what happened in Miami, she said Mark should not kick Colin from the wedding for a little mistake. Yeah, she called it a little mistake. Mind you, if housekeeping had found those drugs, Mark and all his friends would have been in serious trouble. Colin's been caught with drugs before, and his mother bailed him out. No shocker there. So he's already having a record. He's not going to escape jail on his next offense. Also, the reason he keeps buying these drugs is because she keeps giving him money to do so. All he has to do is call her and act like he has an emergency, and she folds every time. She sends him hundreds, sometimes even thousands of dollars, and all he does is buy drugs. His dad already knows this and refuses to give him any money, no matter what dire circumstances he claims to be in. And now, I know some people may be thinking, why don't you guys get him some help? Get him counseling, therapy, rehab. Well, we tried. After this incident, his father booked him 3 months into rehab to get them together. He basically had to send his wife away so she would not interfere, and then threaten Colin so he would go. A week after he was checked in, his mom caught wind that something was off. I guess because she had not heard from Colin in a while. She demanded to know where he was, so Mark and his father sat her down to explain that Colin needed help, and she needed to let him go through this process. At first, she said she was fine with it, but then she went and visited him. When my father-in-law spoke to the staff, they said my mother-in-law coaxed Colin to check himself out of rehab because he was ill and needed to go to the hospital. Y'all, they were detoxing him, and he was having withdrawal symptoms. Everything he described to his mother-in-law, nausea, vomiting, it's all normal symptoms of withdrawal. She was telling people at the hospital that he had food poisoning because they were feeding him old food. Even the people at the hospital, after she explained the situation, were telling her it's withdrawal and it'll pass with time. and that the people of the rehab center probably knew that they were talking about, but she wasn't buying it. Mother knows best, I guess. My mother-in-law was livid. He spent so much money making sure that Colin could not go only to get the help he needed, but also get the best care possible. Like, for the first time, Colin got into trouble with the law. Somebody found him passed out in his car on the side of the freeway with opioids in his glove compartment. The paramedics had to shoot him full of naloxone, like he almost died from an overdose. Yet every time we bring this up with my mother-in-law, she says, "Oh, that was a long time ago, he's better now." Yeah, he's a lot better at taking drugs, but he's still taking them. He can't get a job because he has a record, and he doesn't work in the family business because he was caught stealing. His mom is literally the only person sustaining him, and we keep trying to tell her that maybe, just maybe, if she cuts him off, he'll at least try to get his act together. After all, Mark and I have not been spending as much time around the family anymore. His dad is lovely, and both my kids love their grandparents. They spend more time with them than Mark and I, but I can't be bothered with the drama anymore. Every time we go over there, it's something with Colin, which leads me to what happened last week. We went over for dinner at Mark's parents' place, and it was fine right up until the end. My father-in-law went to take the kids outside for a bit, and Mark and I were in the kitchen with his mother, and she was telling us that Colin was trying to get a loan to start his own business, but he needed help. We asked if he had a business plan, but he did not. We asked if he at least knew what kind of business it was going to be. He did not. We asked if this was just something he thought up out of the blue in order to get some quick cash. She gets mad and said, "He wasn't like that anymore. He was doing his best to change and was trying to build a life for himself, and since we're his family, we should help him." Of course, Mark and I simply refused, and if she wanted to help him so badly, she could do it herself. But then she said if we did not help, she would disown the kids. Mark started yelling at her, calling her heartless for even saying such a thing. Luckily, the kids were still out back with their grandfather, so they didn't hear any of it. But Mark went and got them, and we left in a hurry because he was so mad the whole way home. I honestly can't believe that she's done something like this. I mean, I understand being upset that we would not support her precious little baby boy, but dragging the kids into it was too far. My kids love their grandparents. They ask to go over there all the time, and I can't imagine how they'd feel if they knew their grandma was willing to disown them over something as stupid as money. The next day, Mark spoke to his father about what happened. And he said my mother-in-law had asked him to help out Colin too, but he refused because he wasn't about to get roped into Colin's illegal activities. So now she wasn't talking to him either. He also didn't know she threatened to disown the kids, and he was extremely upset about it. Now, we're all at an impasse. My mother-in-law is part of the family business, and we just bought up some land together, but I just know that she's going to do her best to throw a wrench in everyone's plans. So my dilemma lies in finding the best way to resolve this, if there even is a way. How should I approach this? Bear in mind, I doubt my mother-in-law will budge. She's known to be stubborn, so I need a solution that'll please her. Top comment from the original post, comment number 1. "Oh boy, we have one of those boy moms. I'm sorry, OP. This is such a garbage situation. I hate that she's dragging your kids into this when they have nothing to do with it. I'm not sure of a solution that'll benefit all parties involved. From the way you talk about her, it sounds like nothing, but total unwavering support for your brother-in-law will make her happy. I think it's incredibly stupid to give your brother-in-law money if he's presented you with no plan at all. I mean, like, the fact that he doesn't know what the business is going to be yet is such a huge red flag. Especially for someone who's a drug addict. It sounds like he wants to get his hands on a lot of money fast, but can't manage it on his own because of his record. Don't give it to him, OP." Comment number 2. I feel like the solution is easy. And if you were smarter, you would have thought of it already. Offer him help. Then do the absolute bare minimum. I get not giving him money to do drugs, but you guys talk about him like he's some kind of demon instead of an addict who needs help. Would it kill you to show a little compassion, OP? At the end of the day, your mother-in-law probably really believes that he's changed and is trying to help him. You're complaining about disowning your kids. When you've all turned your backs on your brother-in-law, you can dish it out, but you can't take it. Update number 1. Hey guys, so we finally know what Colin's mystery business is. But before I get into that, I want to provide a little backstory so you guys understand exactly why everyone's so against helping him. Mark's told me he's never really been close with his mom. Colin is the youngest, and she's also just doted on him, babied him, and let him get away with whatever. She's mostly responsible for the way Colin is now because she never let him grow up. Mark was not allowed to drop below a 3.0 GPA in school. Colin could goof off and fail in all his classes, and their mother would make excuse after excuse. When he got kicked out of college, after they found him with drugs, their mother did the same thing that she's doing now. She guilted all of them into involving him in the company, and he ended up stealing from them. He's proven time and time again that he's not responsible or trustworthy. Now that that's out the way, here's the scoop. He's going to run a dispensary. Yeah, the drug addict is opening a dispensary. The jokes really write themselves. I mean, he's opening it under mother-in-law's name, since he can't with his record. We found all this out yesterday when we went over to Mark's parents' house so she and Colin could explain their plan of action. They found a space to rent out, and their mother-in-law applied for all the permits. I guess everything's going to be in her name. More power to her. She's still adamant about us supporting them in this endeavor. According to her and Colin, he had sworn off hard drugs for good and would stick to marijuana and edibles, which are legal in our state. I don't foresee any of this going well, though. Father-in-law says that he wants no part in any of this, but mother-in-law is adamant that we all have to pitch in. She gave this huge speech about how we can just grow the family's empire. What the hell is this, The Godfather? We have one landscaping business and that does well enough. And Mark and I love our jobs. Even if one of us got fired tomorrow, we'd be good for a while. And on top of that, there's a bunch of dispensaries in our area already, and my mother-in-law and Colin aren't planning on doing anything different from them. This is a huge money sink that's going to blow a hole in the pockets of whoever buys in, but there's no getting through to my mother-in-law. My father-in-law even explained all the flaws in the business plan already, and she told him that he was being misogynistic, and that he thought that she would not be a successful business person like him because she's a woman. He told her that, had absolutely nothing to do with it. She was a smart woman making a dumb decision, that's all. After our little meeting, he pulled us aside and tried to brainstorm ways to fix this. He wanted to nip this in the bud before his wife chose the nuclear option, like ruining the family business. My father-in-law told us to lay low until he finds a way to fix all this, and I trust him to think of a solution. I just want this to be over. Update number 2. Hey, good news everyone. My father-in-law found a solution. He tricked his wife into thinking he was on board with her plan and that he was going to convince Mark and me to pitch in and also help her secure a loan at the bank. He came by our house last week. The kids were thrilled to explain what we'd do. So he had a lawyer draft up a document that outlined what everyone involved would contribute. It also included an agreement from the bank that the mother-in-law would use her share of the property as collateral for the loan. All Mark and I had to contribute was furniture for the storefront once they secured the lease and it was getting ready to open. I didn't read what my father-in-law was contributing, but I do assume it was something negligible. See, my mother-in-law has a habit of assigning things without reading them. That's how Colin has been able to gaslight her into giving him money in the past. So if he can get her to sign this, it'll finally teach her a lesson. He was pretty confident that the storefront would never open. Mark and I had no other idea, so we decided to go along with it. But we were biting our nails and praying our father-in-law's plan worked. Furniture for the front of the house wasn't a huge commitment, but we wanted this to teach our mother-in-law a lesson. Also, my father-in-law confided in us that he wanted to put Colin back in rehab, and the only way to make sure she didn't sabotage it this time was to make sure she knew he was beyond all our help. Until he got clean and proved himself, he could not be trusted with money. Well, the very next day, we get a call from our father-in-law telling us that she had signed. He submitted everything to the bank right away. We were thinking maybe the bank would reject them, but my father-in-law said he wanted this to work. So he went to somebody he knew. Well, because of that, the loan got approved. My mother-in-law and Colin are over the moon. I know a little about their plans from here. They were supposed to be paid to paint the storefront, clean it up, and have a sign made. And they'd be ordering stock. Now, my mother-in-law has a degree in management, so she kind of knows what she's doing. She just partnered with the worst person possible. It may be a while before she reaps the consequences of what she just did. Our father-in-law told us to just be patient and go with the flow. This was going to work out in the end, and I'm still a little on edge. Because my mother-in-law might choose the nuclear option and disown all of us. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. Update number 3. Well, it's been a couple of months, and boy do I have an update for you. It turns out my mother-in-law was right. Colin stayed true to his word. He's completely sworn off hard drugs. The dispensary's up and running and things are going well. Since it's near a club in a residential block, there's a steady stream of people coming every day. I'm lying. I'm lying. Everything went horrible. Just like we predicted it would. The one that worked out was securing the lease. But the building has not been painted, the inside has not been cleaned, no signs have been made. Mother-in-law, in her infinite wisdom, said Colin would take care of all that. He claimed that he ordered everything online, and there were shipping delays, so things were just taking longer than they should. Well, that excuse lasted about 2 months, and then my mother-in-law started blowing up our phones because she thought that we were the ones holding everything back, because we had not made our contributions yet. But our contributions weren't meant to be made until the storefront was ready. My father-in-law stepped in to remind her about the agreement, and she backed off. So 2 more months tick by, and my mother-in-law was practically feral at this point because she's been paying the bank for a loan for a business that wasn't even open or making any money. Also, the person who owned the building hit her up and threatened eviction because she was 60 days late on rent. Colin was supposed to be paying the rent, but was not. So she called an emergency family meeting at their place, and Colin didn't even show up. She was complaining to us the whole time about these delayed shipments and how the whole timeline for the business was off. We asked her exactly what Colin ordered. Apparently it was stuff for the storefront, display cases, shelves, that he ordered from China. That was stuff, and Mark was supposed to cover it once it was painted and cleaned. My father-in-law asked her what happened to the people he recommended to her. She said Colin told her he found somebody better and cheaper, but wanted to hold off on painting and cleaning until the stuff for the storefront was ready. He asked her if she had any invoices or anything from where he placed the order. She didn't have any. We asked her if she knew, what store or company he was ordering stuff from. She didn't have a clue. We told her to find out because if the shipment got lost, they could probably get a refund. Well, she called him right then and there, and when he picked up, he said he was busy on the other side of town, but would come over the next day if she wanted to talk business. Well, it was getting late, so Mark and I had to take the kids home. That night, we had a long talk about what we thought happened. As we knew, Colin was probably just going to take the money and use it for whatever, but that's a ton of money to spend on drugs. Mark was worried that maybe he was caught up in something way more nefarious. Gosh, I hope not. Update number 4. Well, we finally know what happened to the money. My father-in-law had to threaten the truth out of Colin because he kept lying to his mom, saying he was in contact with the company in China and they were doing everything they could to get the stuff in on time. Let me preface this by saying he showed up to the house in the middle of the day when usually only his mom was home. He wasn't expecting his father and Mark to be there. But my father-in-law decided to stay in and asked Mark to come in on his lunch break so they'd be able to confront Colin directly. They told him to show them invoices for the products he bought. He said he didn't have a physical one, but he bought them online. Well, Mark offered him his laptop, and he said he couldn't remember his password. His father asked him how he'd been communicating with the company. Well, he said through email, obviously, but could not show any emails to them because it was a different email address. Mark just went ahead to shove the laptop at him and told him he had 5 minutes to show them some kind of evidence that he ordered the stuff from the store. He broke out into an open sweat. So his dad asked him how much that he spent on the storefront displays. He gave a random number, I guess, and his dad told him that's way too much and he should email them to get a refund right then and there because Mark and I were supposed to buy the storefront furniture anyways. Then he said if Colin refused to do it, he would call the police right then and there and have him arrested for theft. His mother tried to step in and tell him no, stop bullying him. But her husband stopped her. Colin finally fessed up and said he used the money from the bank to pay off his debt. Apparently, he was in debt to his dealer, and said dealer told him if he didn't give him the money by a specific date, not only would he not be able to get him any more drugs, he would narc on him, and Colin would be thrown in jail. So all the money's gone, and they still have a lease and loan that they have to pay. My mother-in-law was shaken to the core. Mark said he wished that he could have framed her face, especially after my father-in-law said she'd be responsible for paying off the lease and loan. Well, they came after her since her name was on everything. She asked if she could use some funds from the landscaping company, but he said no. He'd put a clause in the contract saying no funds from the family business could go towards paying for the dispensary. She'd know that if she read the contract. Her husband told her she needed to go and give it to a good long read and make sure that she simply understood what would happen if she could not pay off the loan. She's been calling me and Mark asking for help, but guys, the loan was huge. I wanted no part of it. Needless to say, she agreed to put Colin back in rehab. He goes in next week and they've lost the lease on the store and the owner kept the house. Last month's rent and the security deposit. I think mother-in-law is about to lose her land because she can't keep up with the loan payments. It's a shame that this is what it took to get her to see the light after years of being taken advantage of by Colin. Whatever. Top comments. Good for you, mother-in-law. I hate parents who constantly care for their kids. I know some people might think your father-in-law was being harsh, but those kinds of people have to learn the hard way. Their kids can't do anything wrong until it's something that puts everybody in jeopardy. And goodness, your brother-in-law is going to rehab. I don't think 3 months is long enough, to be honest with you. He needs to stay in there for a year, at least until he curbs his addiction. Comment number 2. I'll give credit where credit's due. I'm glad your brother-in-law is going to rehab. I think it'll be good for him. But what your father-in-law did was bad and underhanded. How could you trick your wife into signing over her property to the bank, knowing full well that your son was going to use the loan for his addiction? Who does that? She was right about him being misogynistic. I don't know why men always feel the need to finger wag at women and treat them like toddlers by doing crappy things under the guise of teaching them a lesson. I hope she finds this post and divorces him. Well. I don't know what to say about this one. It just looks like Colin, he's not going to change. And it looks like his mother, OP's mother-in-law, doesn't want to give up on her baby boy. I mean, think about it. This is her son, and a lot of people in the comments were arguing, saying, hey, she's enabling him. But we don't really hear from her perspective. What if this is all she knows how to do? What if she thinks that this is the route to help him? So I don't want to be too harsh on the mother-in-law because she's stuck in an addiction with her son, and it just seems like this story was a mess. I want to know your thoughts about it. We just read some of the top comments, and I want to know what you have to say about this story, and if you were going to give a bit of advice, what would you say to OP? Yeah, I think it sucks, though, that the mother-in-law's about to lose her land, but at the same time, she should have read the contract before she selfishly kept going against the family's advice just so she could try to protect her son. Let me know your thoughts on it, guys. Drop it down below. Thank you for joining me today, and if you want more daily stories, make sure you subscribe to Mr. Reddito's channel. I'll see you tomorrow, and remember, it's cool to be kind. Peace.